A recent feature article in the Beijing News looked at the situation of those who suffer from the condition known as black lung disease in China. Now, black lung, or dust lung as it's sometimes called, is an occupational lung disease caused by the inhalation of dust over long periods of time. The paper looked at the case of one particular village, Daozi, in Hunan province. It found that back in the 1980s, 200 or so young people from Daozi migrated to cities to work, and at that time the best paying jobs were as drill operators, either in mines or on construction sites. But from around 2000 or so, a large proportion of this group, the paper says about half, began to show symptoms of black lung disease. So far, around a quarter, more than 50 individuals have died, many still in their 40s or even their 30s. The paper claims that others or groups, some of these groups, committed suicide because they couldn't bear the pain that the condition causes. The story of Daozi village, however, is unfortunately far from unique. With the massive boom in construction and mining over the past several decades in China, more and more migrant workers are being diagnosed with black lung disease. Official data show that in coal mines alone, nearly 2.7 million workers are exposed to high levels of dust, and over 700,000 have been reported to suffer from the disease. In fact, each year, more than 6,000 people across the country die from the illness. The feature has stirred up quite a bit of discussion about the issue, so to hear what's being said in the online community, let's now join our researcher Esther Dang, who's in the newsroom. So firstly, Esther, how much do net users know about this terrible illness, black lung disease?
Well, this feature in the Beijing News is just one of several media reports in recent years to look at the cases of these relatively young people contracting black lung disease, most of them actually poor migrant workers. So it's an issue that more and more people online have become aware of. And I've seen plenty of posters, in fact, sharing their own personal experiences, like this poster from Fuzhou, who has this rather sad story. In our village, several middle-aged men I know have died from black lung disease. Sure, they did manage to earn money and build houses for their families, but they themselves had no chance to enjoy that. And Xiaoyu的外外人生 has this warning. I did some drilling work when I was decorating my house. I didn't wear a mask, and I have to say that was really horrible. When I coughed, I could actually see red brick powder coming out of my throat. While other posters share their knowledge of the effects of black lung disease. This comment was on 163.com. Black lung is considered the #1 occupational disease in China, but currently medical technology can't cure it. This disease leads to respiratory failure and heart failure, and in the end, sufferers' lungs become as hard as stone. And then there's this pessimistic information from a poster on people.com.cn. Usually the incubation period for black lung is from 5 to 20 years. Patients do need to suffer a lot, and in the end, can't even walk.
Okay, so what have people got to say about this particular case highlighted by the Beijing News, the case of Daozi village?
Well, of course, lots of posters express their sadness for these patients, and quite a few are also angry at the bosses that employed them. Yang Yan says on QQ.com, if only the bosses could have provided them with oxygen tanks, this could have been avoided. And Fei Xiang de Yuba writes about priorities on Weibo.com. Health is the most important thing. We cannot sacrifice our health to make money. Well, Qingfeng Yinjun has this rather angry comment. So the US develops its GDP based on technology, but we develop our GDP at the expense of our people's lives. And the plenty posters mention one particular point raised by the Beijing News. It says that many of the sufferers did notice they had some symptoms, such as a fever or cough, but they thought it was a mere cold and took a few pills and went back to work. 海阔天空 has this to say. I'm really sad to hear about these stories. I feel so sorry for these migrant workers because their lack of knowledge meant they didn't know how harmful the job they were doing was. And I feel so sorry that the bosses only consider their own interests, not their workers' health. All these cases show that in our country, for lots of dangerous jobs, there's far from enough protection for the employees.
Okay, finally, Esther, we mentioned that usually those who suffer from this disease, black lung disease, are migrant workers really at the bottom of the economic ladder. Is there any talk of a compensation for these patients?
Well, plenty of posters I've seen have made comments on the difficulties involved for most of these patients in getting compensation from the companies they worked for. First of all, they have to face a long wait for compensation, during which time the disease is often getting worse. Here's a post on people.com.cn. To get compensation, they have to go through long and complicated procedures, from identifying it as a job-related disease to providing convincing medical diagnosis results to finally entering the compensation application stage. Usually, by the time the whole procedure is complete, the poor patients have passed away. And some posters point out even if they do manage to get some compensation, the amounts are usually very small. Xiaoxiang Morning Post newspaper also did a series on black lung sufferers in Hunan province. It says that in some cases, the patients who are diagnosed with third-stage black lung disease, the highest severity of the illness, got less than $5,000 in compensation. That's way too small compared with the medical bills they themselves have paid. On the positive side, the issue of black lung sufferers seems to be attracting more and more attention from the public. Wang Keqin, a nationally famous investigative reporter and social activist, set up a foundation in June 2011, especially to help them. So far, he's managed to raise over $1.5 million and has directly helped 760 patients. The help includes paying for lung treatment, which can prolong the patient's lives for 3 to 5 years. However, for most posters, the key point is to prevent workers from being exposed to the conditions that cause the disease, which would happen if employees simply obeyed Chinese labor laws.
Okay, thanks for that, Esther. And that was China Take researcher Esther Deng with an online reaction to a news feature highlighting the problems of black lung disease in China. Next up on China Take, some of the top trending phrases on China's most popular search engines.